right, well, here we are, Dustin, in part one, and in our intro, we kind of gave this foundation of Domino parenting, which is a title that we've kind of joked about offline a little bit. But the idea of domino parenting, I'm going to summarize it. You can interrupt me if I'm saying anything wrong. But domino parenting is that you'd have one thing in place and it knocks over a bunch of things, creates a chain reaction, so to speak, right?
Potential into kinetic, yes.
Yes. And so it's moving things into motion. Yes. So we're now going to dive into part one of domino parenting. And the title of this portion, part one, is Love and Connect with Our Kids. So can you, I mean, it sounds really straightforward, like, of course, why wouldn't a parent love and connect with their kids? It almost feels like, yeah, of course. But why are we starting here?
Yeah, it's, I think love and trustworthiness, they're exactly where our kids begin, right? They come into the world with those two questions. Who am I? Is it safe? And so as they go throughout their experiences with us or with others, they learn that who they are through the answers, through violations and validations of those answers, right? Who I am I accepted? Am I unsafe? And so we start there because that's where our kids are, right?
So what does it look like as we explore that? Let's unpack even this word loving our kids well. I think I could come up with examples of, hey, this is love and this isn't love. But from your perspective, what are some of the ways that we could step into that? If we're going to say, hey, the beginning of this part one is loving and connecting your kids, let's get really practical. How do we love our kids well?
So I think one of the really critical markers here is that if I don't spend time paying attention, it's literally like we said before, it's literally like investing in intimacy with your kids. If I don't spend time specifically with my kids, investing in paying attention to the things that bring them joy, that get them excited. I mean, the big word is play.
Right.
Even if you don't know what you're doing, right?
Yep.
Play with them, because what you'll see, you'll discover unique elements within your kids' interests that come directly from the developing form of who they are. So, we've talked a bunch about like our kids and the things that they're into, and Camden and baseball. I just can't get enough of that little guy. He'll play baseball all day. And when we go on vacation, he wants to play baseball. We're at home, that's all he wants to do.
Yeah.
Play baseball. We will play baseball. And he would literally do it all day. But here's the thing. In the midst of playing baseball, I find that he's disciplined, focused, inclusive in that play. That he's wanting to develop his skill.
Yep.
He practices. He's teachable. Like, I tell him exactly what to do, and guess what he does?
Yep.
He follows it, and man, he gets better and better. And then when he doesn't, it's okay. When he fails, it's okay. When he misses it, he tries again.
Yep.
So the consistency of accessing through play or creating opportunity for kids to love them in a way that allows them to discover the parts of themselves that have freedom.
Which is answering that question, who am I, right?
Yeah, who am I? Yep. And then in the midst of when I fail, the safety sense, like what can I do with safety? Like how do I navigate that or correct it for myself or for my kids? Yeah. How do I correct that for their experience?
Yeah. I'm going to go off the script here just a little bit. What about as they age and as their interests change? So even answering that question of, maybe play. So I'm at an age with my kids where they want to play a lot, but eventually that's going to cycle out and it's going to become different elements. So maybe give us some pictures of how that changes over time. To continue to answer that question. I'm going to have to help create environments for my two boys when they're in high school to still answer that question, right?
Yep.
Who am I and am I safe? So can you maybe navigate right now? Play. Yeah. That's awesome. I can do that with a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. Yeah. But that won't always be their age, obviously.
Yeah.
So what do I do when they're 14 and 18?
Yeah. So as they get older, obviously their margin and capacity changes, right? What they're able to withstand and the difficulties and even their skill sets and their ability to be resourceful with respect to problems or something that they enjoy. So part of what we get to do as parents, right, is that we get to show up in a way that says, I'm going to shoulder this with you. I'm going to go shoulder to shoulder with you. And we hope that at some point they come over us. They outpace us. That they actually perform well beyond our abilities have even been. So that I would say yes. As they progress, so do their margins and their capacities. And so we have to resource that with what we have to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, yeah, I would say even I don't think play goes away. I don't think it ever goes away.
Yeah, I hope not. And I'm looking forward to them, maturing and being able to share interests. Harvey's even getting into. I have some core memories. He's 8, and of some of the things that I started getting interested in around that age of 8, going like, oh, that's when I started this or that, and so that's really fun. But I also like the picture, and so I want to hit on this a little bit of that idea of carrying a burden with your kid, and this might be just a little bit of a step aside from it, but one of the things that I'll say to Harvey is, and I've learned this from other dads. I didn't come up with this, but it's this idea that when we've got 3 things that we say about our family. It's our family motto. We say Steingrubers are true or honest, we're helpful, and we're kind. And so everything always comes back to those 3 things. And so one of the things that I'll talk about with him is like, hey, if you come into an issue and you do something wrong, what do we do? Oh, we're honest. There's always just a little bit of grumbling, right? Yep. But we have a rule. And I reinforce it all the time, and it's along these lines of carrying the burdens. I say, hey, if you're honest, you make a mistake, what happens when you tell Dad? Dad's going to help me. Yeah, we're going to do this together. We're going to figure out the solution to the problem together. Yep. But what happens if you don't tell Dad and I don't know? You can't help me. Dad, I have to do it by myself. And so I love that picture, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I love the idea, and it reinforces what I've learned from other wise fathers. But as they age, we get to carry burdens. We get to walk through difficult circumstances, and I think that's a beautiful picture of that as they age. So.
And find the ways in which you get to infuse that. Yeah. Like how do you get to, what are the methods or the means in which you can help them adapt and integrate that messaging? Right. I think that I love that too. And I've shared with you, ours is love people, help people, and we don't quit. Yep. I love it. Help people, love people. We love people, help people, and we don't quit. And I will do that in every opportunity, because at some point it becomes the methodology in which they will carry into the world, right? So we shoulder this with them, we lead this, we carry it for them, we shoulder it with them, and then we send them off, which we'll get to at some point too, right? With that, the ability and the disciplines that are hopefully proficient enough to manage the burdens of their life. So the other thing I was going to say in terms of a platform or a methodology, I absolutely love, Jordan. Like, I think I've shared before with you that the idea of to like have like an ongoing story or something like ours is, we do the Ollie and Abby story, and so at night we'll sit down and we'll do our best in our words. We talk about our day, and then I do this thing where I go, and now it's time for, and we sing the song that we made up for Ollie and Abby, right? And then what's so beautiful about this is I let the kids say what's going to happen in the story today, and almost invariably what they will do is they will start telling their own experience. But it's through the characters, so it's safe. It's beautiful because there was Ollie got in a fight with their friend, and they're really sad. I'm like, okay, and so I get to create this story. I get to build it up in a way that she can connect to, and my son can connect to, and then I get to weave in the justice. Yeah. And the idea of storytelling and playing with them in that, they don't forget it at all. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times Addie has recalled a story that we've talked about before. So what I've tried to do in that, and I think this is something every parent can do, is to create themes as it would go to stories. Kids will always tell stories. That's what they do. Yep. To create themes. So like in our Ollie and Abby story, I have things like the anxious maybes, the happy me's, the bad whys, like that kind of stuff, where it's a theme that we talk about, and it's just so fluid. Now it's not perfect. Right. There's nights where my little guy's like, I don't want to do it. Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay. Right. Yeah. But I create opportunity for them, and I think that's every parent has the ability to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that idea of having kids live out some of their experience, because I think that's one of the things I think is a common thread for all parents is, and even as they age and get older and older, it gets theoretically worse. It would be as you ask, hey, how was your day at school? And fine. Even at a young age, both of my boys, would come home from preschool or kindergarten. It's like, hey, what'd you learn today? And one of them would tell me nothing, and then the other one tells me everything. Oh, okay. So, and I'll have to try and like joke around, with Cohen. I'll say, okay, so did you learn about hippos today? No. Did you? And finally, it turns into a joke where he'll finally correct me. Mm-hmm. But that idea of through storytelling, allowing a kid. Which answers that question: am I safe too? I think because that's a safe way for them to say this was a painful, I think especially a painful part of my story. Yes. So can we help navigate that? That's really really cool. How would you? And I love that you say every parent has the capacity. how would you encourage someone to start that? Because like, is there a format or a time that you found to be helpful? Because I know some parents would go, I'm not creative. I'm not good at coming up with things on the fly like that. Is there any tips you'd have for the story time?
So I would say you don't have to be creative. Your kids are. So even if you don't have all of these pieces put together and you don't have these themes created for your kids, simply just saying, hey guys, let's do a story. What should we talk about in a story?
Yeah.
To ask them.
Okay.
You did this too. You said, hey, what did you learn about today? Everything. That's pretty creative, right? That's that's, I wouldn't say everything like that. So for you get to just ask questions. Questions are a key to get into into the intimate space with our kiddos.
Yeah.
Like questions are critical, right?
Yeah.
So in order to create something, right, you got to first understand who the target is, right? So if it's your kids and you have a specific thing about maybe there's some problem behavior or maybe there's issues in relationships or maybe you've seen your kids have started to change in the way that they've engaged in others or there's some kind of symptomology that might go along that and you're concerned about that, right? Asking questions will be the first step to take, right? And so whether it's a storytelling thing that you're trying to generate or create some kind of unique experience with your kids, questions are always the place that I start with. And it's also, as we go to the next part, when we talk about correcting our kids, questions will come up there often too. So, yeah.
So then let's transition a little bit into the connection portion. So what are some strategies to connect with our kids, especially when it comes to some of their differences? Every kid is different. So how do we figure out how to connect with them and stay connected with them through the different changes of life? And maybe even a follow-up. I know one of the things we've talked about is as kids age, we're dealing with more inflammation, I think is the phrase you would use, where it comes to like, hey, there might be more anxiety or more depression or more struggle. As we age, our problems expand, right? There's more opportunity for those problems to feel and actually be bigger.
Right.
So as we navigate parenting, how do we continue to connect with them and keep that going as the problems and the opportunities, all the things as they change? Can you give us some strategies there?
Okay, so I'm going to start kind of general and then I'll try to get specific. So consistency, predictability, reliability, dependability, all of those.
Can you say those again?
Yeah, consistency, dependability, reliability, and there was one other.
Dependability? Or did you already say that?
All the abilities.
Okay, all the abilities. Great. Yeah.
So those have to be something that kind of inform our structure. Kids will learn to attach to us in specific ways. We're built for unity.
Yep.
In fact, this is good. Let me give you a quick example with this idea. I was sitting it's one of my favorite examples of this. I was sitting at a light downtown and I saw the ad across the walk and I was stopped at the red light and these two ladies walked across the street and it was all of a sudden I recognized that their feet were in perfect stride. Like their feet were perfectly, their bounce, their arms, they were looking at each other. And I thought to myself, they weren't thinking, I'm going to see if I can do this perfectly with this. No, that just happens, right? It's like we're built for unity.
Yeah.
And so what, when it comes to making sure you stay connected with your kids, well, first of all, I like to say, I'm like, this idea that we are our kids' VIP. We get to be our kids' VIP, right? Where vulnerability is an essence of connection. You don't have connection. You don't have trustworthiness without vulnerability. It's the prerequisite to it, right? So vulnerability, right? Being intentional with your pursuit of them. Literally, you just say, hey, what did you guys learn at school today? Is an intentional attempt to connect. Is a bid for connection, right?
Yep.
And you won't have that if you don't ask that question. Right. So being intentional with your kids, even if it doesn't require extended periods of time in that moment of intentionality, that's another one. And then obviously, being present when you're engaging, right? Being aware, mindful of what they're saying or what they're looking for. I can't tell you how many kids, and it's not just kids, but how many kids will try to get their parents' attention. Yeah. And their parents will be a bit distracted on their phone, swiping away on their phone, like distracted on stuff. And that is just you're just going to lose contact and connection and they're going to find it in other ways. Yeah. So whether it's screen time or it's other friends or it's some other thing. And so we're uniquely poised to be connected with our kids and to be helpful in the midst of deviating from their sense of peace in life, right? So like you said, when there's those swollen emotions, anger, depression, anxiety, when the kids inevitably will have that. And the kids, they'll go to school. Addie had last year, she had a care program that she just did not like. She didn't connect well with the students and she didn't, have any sense of like that she belonged there. And it was so painful for her.
Right.
But if I wouldn't have known that, she's very quiet. If I don't ask her questions, I don't learn that.
Yeah.
So again, VIPs, right? I think that we get to be that, and it's really beautiful. So,
yeah. And that's, I mean, such a great foundation, vulnerable, intentional, and present. And I think that can, for me, I'm going to walk away with that because, Alyssa and I use that word. I'm glad you said it, but bidding. And we learned this from Mike Foster, I believe, was the one who introduced us to it. But he talked about how in marriage relationships, there will be bids for attention where his example was like, you might have a husband and wife, and the husband says, "Hey, honey, come check out these birds out the window." And she might not care at all about the birds, but he's just bidding for attention. Right. He wants to share something. Mm-hmm. And so Alyssa and I have used that as kind of a trigger point to even correct each other to go, he's bidding, if there's something and we're distracted. And so I love that idea of presence. Yeah. And obviously, talk a little bit about vulnerability because you used the phrase vulnerability begets vulnerability. Yeah. And so how do we as parents, if we're going to be vulnerable, intentional, and present, how do we exhibit vulnerability to our kids in a way that invites them to mimic that? Because I think that can be such a tough thing to do.
Yeah, no, this is great because I had an experience yesterday with my daughter. She was not having a good morning. She was not having a good morning, and she was on the stairs and she wanted everyone to know that she was not having a good morning. And part of it was the same.
I'm sorry. The kids are so funny that way sometimes, where it's like when they want someone to know they're not doing great, they can figure it out, right?
Yeah. So I could tell, and my bids for connecting with her she was just not having it. So she sits down on the stairs. I go over and I sit down on the stairs, and we do zones, right? So green zone, yellow zone, red zone, right? I'm like, I'm in the yellow zone right now, and I need to know what's happening for you. I want to know how I can be helpful to you. What's happening? And she's like, she didn't want to talk. So part of what was happening is we weren't going to be able to see each other for about a week. Mm-hmm. They're on vacation, this really cool thing, and so we weren't going to see each other for a week, and we were both feeling a sense of like we're going to be disconnected and a bit anxious about that, right? And so I said, here's why I have big feelings, and I told her, and I said, is that some of your big feelings? And she goes, yes, and instantly she was soft, but because I was being soft. If I would have done the opposite, if I wasn't vulnerable,
right.
Get up off the stairs. It's time to go get whatever, like it's hard for me to, if I was to do that, I have done that, but if I was to do that in that moment, I would have completely missed the opportunity to connect with her, to be a VIP for her.
Yeah. And I've experienced that too, where I've had moments with Harvey where I'll choose to say, hey, here's what I think is going on. Mm-hmm. It seems like this is happening. Am I on to it? Mm-hmm. And he'll either correct me because he's smart. Yeah. Or he'll say, yeah, you're spot on, Dad. Mm-hmm. And that softness does open up. So anecdotally, I've experienced that. I've also done the exact opposite too. Where it's like, all right, I'm counting to 3. And if not, here's what's going down.
Yeah, boundaries, right? So in the idea of connecting, right? Like when they're swollen, when we're swollen, we use this phrase in the model in restoration therapy. We use this phrase, chase the pain. If I chase the pain, it's going to give me something that's connected to what's been violated for them in those 2 questions. Yeah. I'm going to learn, like, where do they feel unloved? Where do they not feel safe? Where do they feel insecure? Where do they feel missed or alone or something? And so if I chase that through questions, through presence, through vulnerability and intentional, I'm giving some kind of present moment with them, I'm going to find it. Not always, and it isn't perfect. Yep. But that's not a thing with parenting.
Yeah. We also talked a little bit about this other acronym that you've got, and it's HOPE. Can you bring that into it? What does that stand for? How does that fit into love and connection?
When that's more in the realm of when we get to correction, but the idea is like no matter what we want to offer hope, right? And we'll come back to this, but the idea that we want to honor our kids when they're going against maybe the things that's obviously expected, the way of being kind and honest and
true. Yeah. Kind, helpful, true. Yeah.
Kind, helpful, and true.
Yeah.
So when they start to deviate from that, right, to honor them and their ability to choose, because just as God's given us free will, they have some free will. So we want to honor them. We want to, give them the observation. Here, guys, what I'm seeing happen. This is what I'm seeing happen. Yeah. Right. We want to be respectful and honor them in the observations that we give them. So, and then to give them a practical correction. Yep. So You can either choose to do this, or there's going to be a consequence, and that would be really sad. You separate yourself from that, right? What's practical, right? So, if you get up right now and you put your shoes away, I think that's going to be easier than if you keep yourself in a position where you're making yourself have bad feelings, and I don't want you to have those. And then the last one is to encourage them and to say, I know you can do this. You can do this, right? So I remember a time way back in the day where Addie she was young enough to where she wasn't super confident with stairs. And I was right below her, right? And I was helping her go. She fell and she was so scared. I'm like, Mac, I got you. I know you're scared. I know you're having a hard time going down the stairs, but you know what? You could take just one step and I've got you. Honor, observation, practical, opportunity and encouragement. And it's beautiful because not that it's perfect, but it's beautiful because it's the method will allow them to keep moving.
How does identity play into all this? We talked a little bit about that before we started recording, and how connecting back to our identity, who we are, in our loving and our connecting. Can you unpack that just a little bit?
Yeah. So
as we wrap this up.
Yeah. Identity is essentially it all comes back to it, right? We learn all we need to know about ourselves through the context of our experiences of love. So kids, they don't reflect themselves, right? We're built for unity, and so as we start to model, and hopefully we get really proficient about modeling the right kind of behaviors that they're going to absorb. So integrity, which is like whole and undivided, right? Is what integrity is. So if I can model that for my kids, right, that who I am is going to be something that they start to practice too, which will emphasize and allow for them to discover who they are too, right? So it all comes back to identity, whether it's the swollen emotions, anger, depression, anxiety, or it's the joy that comes by way of the freedom to express who they are. And I'll say, our kids it's for our kids and ourselves, man. Our greatest peace in life comes by the greatest expression of who we are. So when we're free in our expression, that is where our greatest joy comes from. So, and the other bit on this, when it comes to identity, is how our kids see themselves based on the reflection that we give them of them. So one of my favorite examples, I love this one, is when I'll one of the ways Addie likes to connect is through illustrations. So I will, this is part of what I call the gateways. Doing is the gateway to being. So Addie's very creative, but I know that because she likes to draw. And so what I'll do is on Fridays, I will draw her on napkin. I'll draw this really fun, kind of intense picture sometimes. And I'll send it. She won't see it in her lunch. She'll go and open it up at lunch, and her friends will see it, and they'll be all excited. And they start to want to see this, which gives her a sense of connection away from me, where she gets to have all this cool attention from her friends, and even teachers get into it, and she just feels special, loved, known. And then she tries to draw the same things. It's awesome.
That's so awesome. My final question, in where I'd want to kind of land the plane, is one of my favorite things about how you approach all of these things is also through a lens of our relationship to God. And so how does all of this, these are very practical and, wise approaches to parenting, but give us a glimpse of how this relates to, as followers of Jesus, our relationship in that way, and how, as we follow Jesus, this reflects other things. Because I love how you're able to weave that together, that we're not just doing this based on, to use the kind of Christianese phrase, worldly wisdom, but it's also wrapped up in what we believe about who God is inviting us to be, and some of those things. So can you kind of weave that narrative together?
I think I have a typical, with being a therapist, right? I have this typical bias of looking at the emotions of all the things. And so what I love about the position I get to be, good happens with my kids. I don't have to make it. It will happen. I can also emphasize it. But when the things are bad, when there's moments of pain or whatever, here's what I look at, that we have this ability to show up for our kids, is that we know that suffering produces, right? What am I drawing out of my kids? These deep wells of water, as Proverbs 19 says, or 20 says, that their heart's deep waters. So how am I drawing it out into something that is going to be persevering, that builds character, and then turns into this understanding of what's to come, this hope, right? Or, like the idea of that, when I'm suffering, what God does, right? He shows up, he says he'll make us strong, firm, and steadfast. And so as I get to replicate this with what I've been given in my experience of Jesus, right? What he's done for me in my great suffering and trauma, right? When he shows up and he goes, there you are. What do I do with my kids? Why are you on the stairs? No, I don't want to do that. I will fail, but I want to show up like that and to say, I see you, girl.
Yeah.
I see you, bud.
Yep.
What do you need?
Yeah.
I got you, you know. And I think because we get to experience that, obviously we get to give that. So
I love that. Well, that's a great way to wrap up part one, and looking forward to part two. Thanks, Dustin.
yeah.